Broadcasting from the Civic Cypher Studios, welcome to the QR Code, where we share perspective, seek understanding, and shape outcomes. The man you are about to hear from is a man who truly inspires me with the written word and through the spoken word. He is the Q in the QR Code. He goes by the name of Q Ward.
The voice that you just heard says that I inspire him and that he loves me and that I'm his brother and all this stuff, but he almost let me die in the car driving back across the country. And I told him that that's what was happening, and he did nothing to help me.
I couldn't.
Like nothing. And he is the R in the QR code. He goes by the name Ramses John.
Oh, that's a story we got to tell, man. Anyway, we need you to stick around later on in the show for entertainment. We're talking about Kanye West responding to claims that his apology letter that we covered yesterday was a PR move. We're going to have some dialogue. Have you ever forgiven a bully? We're also going to check in with Q Ward for his clapback today. Efficiency is the excuse. I'm really excited to hear what you have in store for us today. For Better Do Better, this is kind of a tough one for a lot of Gen Zs and maybe even some millennials. TikTok has turned into the ops. TikTok is having a terrible go at this new ownership and really infringing on, well, I guess it's a private company. They can do what they want, but a lot of people that have come to enjoy TikTok for being a place to express themselves are finding that is now no longer possible under this new ownership, and they're being surveyed. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to start off a long segment. We're going to stretch our legs this time. Racism is killing us, literally. But right now, we are going to start off, as always, with a feel-good feature, some ebony excellence today. This is from the BIN. Amanda Gorman has shared a powerful new poem honoring Alex Preddy, the 37-year-old ICU nurse and U.S. citizen who was killed by federal immigration officers in Minneapolis, using poetry once again to document grief, injustice, and national reckoning. Gorman posted the poem titled "For Alex Jeffrey Preddy" on Instagram over the weekend. In the piece, she describes Preddy's killing as both a betrayal and an execution, framing the violence as a rupture between the state and the people it claims to protect. The poem arrives amid widespread outrage over Preddy's death and renewed scrutiny of federal immigration enforcement, particularly as questions mount around accountability and use of force. Earlier this month, Gorman also used her platform to honor Renee Nicole Good, another U.S. citizen killed by a federal immigration officer in Minneapolis on January 7th. In a separate Instagram post accompanying that poem, Gorman wrote that she was horrified by the ongoing violence that ICE wages upon our community. That was a quote. And also adds, quote, discrimination and brutality on an unconscionable scale. Gorman has emphasized that her work is meant not only to mourn individual lives, but to remember all those lost to state violence. In her post honoring Good, she also referenced others killed by ICE, including Keith Porter Jr., and noted that dozens of people have died in ICE custody in recent years. The 27-year-old poet, who became a global figure after reciting "The Hill We Climb" at President Joe Biden's 2021 inauguration, has repeatedly turned to poetry in moments of national crisis. Her past work has addressed the Uvalde shooting, reproductive rights, and racial injustice, positioning poetry as both memorial and resistance. I suggested that we were going to stretch our legs. This is something that I feel very strongly about. So if you'll forgive me, I'm going to go over on my clocks, all the affiliates, because I do want to share this poem. I think it's important that people hear the words of this great poet, and also there's something I want to add on the other side of that, and the poem will make it make sense. So please bear with me. For Alex Jeffrey Preddy, murdered by ICE, January 24th, 2026, by Amanda Gorman. We wake with no words, just woe and wound. Our country shooting us in the back is not just brutality, it's jarring betrayal, not enforcement, but execution. A message: love your people and you will die. Yet our greatest threat isn't the outsiders among us, but those among us who never look within. Fear not those without papers, but those without conscience. Know that to care intensively, united, is to carry both pain, dark horror for today, and a profound, daring hope for tomorrow. We can feel we have nothing to give and still beloved this world, waiting, trembling to change. If we cannot find words, may we find the will. If we ever lose hope, may we never lose our humanity. The only undying thing is mercy, the courage to open ourselves like doors, hug our neighbor, and save one more bright, impossible life. So Q purposely doesn't know that I'm going to do this. Normally we have a meeting before the show, but I want to take a moment here because, for the people that don't know, Amanda Gorman is a Black woman. One of the things that I don't even need to hold it to be true, it is factual, is that Black women continue to show up and save this country from itself. We covered a story about the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense in Philadelphia, now known as the Black Lions. And I know that there are people that left comments saying that, the Black Panthers are racist and against white people and all that sort of stuff, which isn't true. It's never been true. Indeed, there have been Black Panthers who were white, and there were even white Panthers as well, which is a separate aligned organization. And in the history that I know, Black people have loved on white people consistently, even those that really didn't deserve it. I believe it is consistent with the nature of Black women, Q will agree with me here, to love first, which is why it's so heartbreaking when we wade through this muck of a reality in which we live and daily come to terms with the fact that Black women are almost always last on the list for everything good, first on the list for everything bad. We believe that Black women are as close to God as we can be. We believe that we know that Black women gave birth to Homo sapiens sapiens, our species. All of us are related to Black women. They are our mothers, and I forgot where I've heard it, but the word mother is akin to the word God for a baby. And what are we if not but babies that got to hang out for a long time? So we haven't lost sight of the fact that Black women are the closest that we will get to God on this planet. This poem here is an example of a Black woman still showing up. I realized that Black women were very, very fatigued after the last election. And there were a lot of conversations of, we're going to sit this one out. And I'm not going to speak for all Black women. I can't do that, of course. But I know that that is something that the handful that did say that sort of stuff may have said that out of frustration. But generally speaking, the culture of Black women is to be supportive, to help, to give, to pray for you. And it's a very sad thing to know that Black women are often forgotten or left behind or mistreated or misused. You and I vowed to be warriors on behalf of Black women. And it's moments like this where this Black woman will use her platform to say, this was an injustice to this man. This man was not Black, as you know. Alex Preddy was a white man. But, to God, we're all God's children. So when I say that Black women have shown up to save us time and time again, I think this is an example that you can circle back to if you ever hear that again in the future and know what that means. This is obviously a beautiful work, but I think the spirit of Black women is encompassed in this action. Any thoughts to add here, Q?
Well, you guys can hear the emotion. And I know how semantics get, especially when it's our show. There's a couple of times the word white was used for Black and vice versa. Black women are often last on every list that's for good, and first on every list that's for bad, is what Ramses was expressing. And Alex Preddy was not a Black man; he was a white man, is what Ramses was expressing there. But you guys can hear the emotion and the heartbreak of the reality that sits at the feet of Black women perpetually. Absorb all of the harm while simultaneously being the creator and the savior every time. Be abused and oppressed. Have every resource taken from you. Because just like Ramses said, the word mother is akin to God, is akin to earth. Those words and this use are synonymous with one another. The creator of everything, where everything is born from and grows from. It's a really, really interesting truth to watch Black women continuously show up, continuously save us from ourselves while absorbing again so much abuse, being taken for granted so aggressively. And it's interesting because out of sheer exhaustion, you saw Black women on the internet say that they would sit this one out. We knew that that was performative frustration when we heard it. Black women show up every time. It's like telling your child not to do something and pretending that right before they hurt themselves that you're not going to intervene because they need to learn the lesson. Except Mother Earth, Black woman, her heart won't allow her to sit it out and watch you suffer, even if you asked for it, even if you pushed her out of the way to get to the suffering that you're now enduring. She's still going to show up to save you because that's what Black women do. So, you know, the frustration of trying to be the shield, trying to be the champion, trying to be the warrior, and the hurt that comes with that. You guys may have heard me express that as what failure feels like. And I think, again, because we did not have this conversation before, I think that's what you hear and the emotional release that you just witnessed from Ramses.
Thank you for that, Q. All right, so I think that this plugs in neatly. We're just going to let it ride. I mentioned we're going to stretch our legs, and that's what we're doing. Racism is killing us, literally. I'll share a bit. So we came about this from the Washington Post, but I'm going to share a bit of an article from Red Lake Nation News that sources the original Washington Post article and study. In that article, just letting you know where we're getting this from, but you can verify both of these if you so choose. Nearly half of the mortality gap between Black and white adults can be traced to the cumulative toll of a lifetime of stress and heightened inflammation, a new study published Monday shows. The study, published in JAMA, that's JAMA Network Open, bolsters the body of evidence showing that chronic stress takes a biological toll that shortens lives. Quote, "It's important to be empirically demonstrated," unquote, said Ryan Bogdan, the study's senior author and a professor of psychological and brain sciences at Washington University in St. Louis. Researchers tracked the prevalence of two proteins linked to inflammation in the body and tied it to enduring discrimination and related social challenges. The measurement captures more comprehensively the aftermath of stressful events, he said. And I'm going to share a separate article saying more or less the same thing, but this is from washu.edu, so Washington University. washu.edu, again, for those that want to read the full article. Black Americans die younger than their white counterparts, with an estimated 1.63 million excess deaths having occurred between 1999 and 2020, according to research in the Journal of the American Medical Association. These excess deaths are predominantly attributable to chronic conditions such as heart disease and cancer. WashU graduate student Isaiah Spears wanted to take the lifespan view of stress exposure to test whether a heightened burden of chronic stress and its association with inflammation may plausibly drive elevated mortality risk among Black Americans. To do that, the team looked at the extent of stress exposure across the lifespan and its association with inflammatory biological markers, C-reactive protein, and interleukin-6, and how they are associated with racial differences in mortality risk. They found that the elevated stress exposure experienced by Black Americans across their lifespan is associated with heightened inflammation, and that these factors explained roughly half of the elevated mortality risk among Black relative to white Americans in their study. Scientists think that stress shortens life via immune dysregulation and inflammation. The concept of allostatic load, or wear and tear on the body, means that chronic stress can deregulate body systems in homeostasis, leading to premature aging. Quote, if stress becomes chronic, that could be incorporated into one's homeostasis. You may become less able to mount your biological systems to respond to acute stress challenges, and you may be less able to return to a bodily state that promotes regeneration and restoration, unquote, Bogdan said. Now, one of the things that you don't know if you're just coming to the table is that, we cover this story every time there's a new study that comes out that confirms that we're gonna die. Q and I are Black men, and we're gonna die younger than we should, and our families and our children and the reason why some of our elders didn't live as long as they may have otherwise lived is because of stuff like this. So this is something that we already know. Recently, we covered we did a couple of these, Q, where we talked about epigenetics and basically how trauma is passed on from one generation to the next. And there's a trauma response that is relived in a generation that did not experience the original, source trauma. There's a very famous rat study that took place. I'll just share briefly for folks just to bring it to the table. There were generations of rats that, they were trained to get food and, do different things or whatever. And if a rat got something, or there was a sound, I think they played, in that study, if I'm not mistaken, they played a sound and then they electrocuted the floor, so all the rats' little feet got electrocuted. And they did this to train the rats that if you hear that sound, an electric shock is coming. And then, of course, the rats had babies, and they had babies, and they had babies, and however many generations down the line. And when they played the noise, even without shocking the floor, for the rats that never got the shock, the rats still panicked when they heard the noise and scattered like they were going to get their feet shocked, right? So this is kind of one of the baseline experiments for epigenetic studies. The long and short of it is that racism is killing us, like literally, not like necessarily like us getting hung in a tree or getting shot by the police or beat to death, or this isn't even talking about environmental racism, which includes like factors like how Black people have to live close to the chemical plant that's polluting, because they put that in the Black neighborhood, they would never put it in the white neighborhood. There's more pollution, there's more trash, there's less access to hospitals, healthcare, food that's healthy. You know, the closest food store is a dollar store, you know, that sort of thing. So black people are more likely to live in food deserts. It's poverty, but in this country, poverty and blackness are kind of strange bedfellows. This isn't talking about the effects of, you know, just long-standing racist policies that have to do, have their origin stories in the, you know, the unfair distribution of the GI Bill, that have their origin stories in, you know, redlining and so forth and so on. This isn't, you know, disparate healthcare outcomes, how doctors don't listen to black women, or doctors assume that black people have thicker skin or have a higher pain tolerance based on bogus science from the slave days when they used slave for experiments and didn't give them anesthesia and whatnot because they didn't think that slaves felt pain. And a lot of that has been recycled into even modern scientific journals and whatnot. This is why more black people died during COVID, because they thought black people took in extra air because our nostrils were wider. So we had a different breathing index, as though we were somehow sub or superhuman instead of the standard Homo sapiens sapien. So there's a number of ways that racism is killing us, but the stress that we endure in a society that is constantly crushing us is what this particular article is speaking to. And again, we've covered this exact thing many times before, but every time there's some new news, we have to revisit it and we have to share it with you, because if we don't tell you, we're not sure that you'll ever hear it. So again, Washington Post, Red Lake Nation News, and washu.edu. Your reflections here?
You know, I don't want to minimize this actually killing us, right? Because there was a delineation that you pointed out, like, you know, not like hanging us or shooting us, except exactly like hanging us or shooting us.
Yeah, you're right.
We have this way of marginalizing stress-related death as if it somehow has a different impact on the body. No, your soul escapes your body the same way. If stress induces your brain and your body's biology to not be able to function properly and you die, your body died. It does not say, "Well, at least I wasn't shot." So I don't want us to continue to minimalize the impact that happens.
Yeah.
And something, I don't know how much time I have, something that I really want to say plainly, and I'm hoping I can try to express this quickly.
Yeah.
White listeners, white supremacy was not designed only to harm black people. It was also designed to harm you. That is not an accusation. That's a description of how this system works. The economic system that we live under requires inequality. A small group at the top accumulating enormous wealth only works if the majority can be kept from uniting against that system. Race as a social construct became the solution. It's both the child and the sword of white supremacist racist capitalism. Whiteness was not created to celebrate whiteness as a culture. It was created as a class, as a status, a psychological wage, if you will, a promise that said, hey, you may be poor and struggling, but at least you're not them. That truth that you think you learned, I promise, was a lie. White supremacy did not make white people powerful. It convinced many to emotionally align with the wealthy, many to emotionally align with their oppressor, people who would never have access to that power or that protection or that prosperity, aligned with that group of people, even though they would never share it with them. People were taught to fear their neighbors, black, brown, immigrant, poor, the real beneficiaries of consolidated wealth, crushed unions, strict labor protections, and bought the political system. That was not an accident. That was the entire design. That was the whole point. White supremacy didn't make white people rich. I know that sounds confusing, and I'll revisit this at another time when I can talk about it in longer form. It just made them distracted.
Oof.
It replaced class solidarity with racial resentment. We share the same economic pain, most of us, across all ethnicities, religions, lifestyles, etc. Shared economic pain, however, became cultural warfare. And while people fought against each other, that ladder kept moving upward. Look around. Declining life expectancy, hollowed out cities, an opioid crisis, no safety net, no leverage, and at this point, no voice. Different harms that we all experience, same root cause, however. Understanding this isn't about guilt, it's about clarity. The moment people realized this system was built to keep poor people divided instead of united, that illusion would fall apart. And then solidarity between most of us against a few of them would be possible and powerful. But because that is dangerous, this lie persists. And this is why Ramses and I telling this truth matters. That's why white supremacist Christian nationalism has come back so aggressively. Right? The last thing that they want to happen is for us to look left and right and see each other as brothers and sisters, and look up and see those few pairs of hands that are taking everything from all of us. Whiteness as an idea did not emerge naturally. White supremacy did not grow out of an inherent racial hatred. Both were deliberately constructed to stabilize an economy and to support a system that was built on extraction. Capitalism requires, Ramses and I have said this a lot, permanent inequality. Permanent inequality required justification, and race became the justification. White and black both invented as social categories to divide the, at the time, permanent labor class versus what you would have considered an everyday laborer at the time. Even if the wages of nothing for slaves and very, very little for poor white people were very close to the same, the psychological wages were different. You rendered exploitation morally acceptable. Racism is not a glitch in the system. It is the system. It's the central nervous system of what this country was built on. Again, it is both the child and the sword of white supremacist capitalism, designed to prevent the poor from recognizing that their shared material interest and uniting against concentrated wealth and power would change everything for all of us. Again, one day I'll have to take a lot more time to explain that to you with more detail, because I know it's a strange thing to try to hear. Wait, white supremacy was not created to serve white people? No. Capitalism needed a way to endure. The wealthy few knew that the poor masses would unite at some point against them. That's the way humanity used to work. Those few people over there have everything and we have nothing. We're going to go take it. Unless we are over here too busy fighting each other to even notice that they're stealing everything from us. We have so much more in common than what divides us. And what divides us has endured for so long that even when solidarity presents itself, we resent it and we fight against it. I am watching my brothers and sisters now as an uncomfortable truth has begun to wake up some white Americans. 2 white people have been murdered, have been killed on camera, and that it can even happen to us is starting to wake some people up. And the resentment of us having been screaming this all this time while being ignored is trying to block a brief moment at solidarity. If you can, please don't let it. We'll be back in a minute.